Hi everyone, I'm Schmidt. I'm a writer and I enjoy writing magic stories and fantasy, and I particularly like writing stories that take place in the real world but have a fantastical element to them. And that brings me to my latest book, The DREAMWEAVERS. The DREAMWEAVERS takes place in ancient China and follows two twins whose village falls under a mysterious curse. And their grandpa gets blamed and arrested for it. So it's up to the twins, who are complete opposites, to journey together to the imperial palace in order to solve the mystery behind the curse and clear their grandpa's name and save their village. And along the way, they meet several mystical characters that are common in Chinese mythology. So without further ado, I will read an excerpt from The DREAMWEAVERS. Chapter 1. Many moons ago, there was a small village in the mountains of southern China. During the day, the village was like any other, scattered across the country. But sometimes at night, just past bedtime, a remarkable thing would happen there. It would happen after the firewood cooled beneath kitchen stoves, after oil lamps winked out behind windows one by one, after conversations in each house dwindled to drowsy whispers, and a breath of quiet swept across the sleepy village. It was a time when even the rowdiest children gave up their struggle to stay awake. In the sky above, soft clouds would nestle the bright moon as its white light smeared the glassy waters of the Pearl River nearby, where schools of colorful fish slept beneath the smooth surface. None of the villagers would be awake by the time a mysterious figure emerged on one of the drifting clouds. But if any of them had happened to sit up and glance outside, they'd see the hunched figure carried what looked like a fishing rod. Yet this was no ordinary fisherman. The man would sit cross-legged on the edge of the cloud, his silhouette illuminated by the bloated moon behind him. He dangled the rod in the air and then cast a line, as easily as if he were fishing from a rowboat on the river. For the next few hours, he quietly reeled in his invisible catches and placed them carefully into a porcelain jar. Then, as silently as he had appeared, he vanished into the shadows. None of the villagers ever laid eyes on him, or on the mysterious things that he placed in his jar. But I have, from my quiet home on the moon above. And I've seen two children with him on those clouds, one boy and one girl. Chapter 2. And for reference, this takes place during the Ming Dynasty, so 1500s AD. May pointed her weapon upward like an umbrella. With her strong pose and steady concentration, the 12-year-old could almost pass as a warrior from the imperial city. That is, if the warriors wore tunics, used knobby branches as swords, and were forced to wait an eternity for their dueling partners to present themselves. "Hurry up, Yun," she sighed. "Wait," replied May's twin brother, who approached slowly, holding a similar wooden branch. He fumbled with a stick, trying to find the best way to grip it between his fingers. "There's a proper way to hold this in combat, in order to maximize the length of the blade." "Well, the imaginary blade," Yun corrected himself matter-of-factly. "This, of course, is merely a substitute for a real sword." "Come on! I've been waiting for 5 minutes." All right. Yun took his place so that the pair stood opposite each other in the shade of a willow tree beside the Pearl River. They were identical in terms of age and most features. Dark eyes, straight black hair, lightly toasted skin. But their personalities were as different as night and day. May was the impatient one. Adults often said she was as restless as an ant on a frying pan. Yun was a careful, cautious one who adults said moved at an ant's pace. Above the willow tree, the sky was a pale blue, the sun unusually warm. The calendar said late autumn, but the air felt like early summer. The yellowing grass tickled the twins' bare feet. The siblings, however, didn't have time to appreciate the weather. More important things were at stake that morning. They made a bet earlier that whoever lost a duel had to give the winner their share of desserts for a week. As the Mid-Autumn Festival was 2 days away, a loss meant missing out on their grandpa's famous batch of mooncakes, and that was out of the question. All right, on the count of 3, May readied her stance. 1, 2, counted Yoon. 3. They swung their sticks. Wood bounced off wood. May separated easily and jumped forward, her black braids swaying. Her branch sliced the air and hit Yung's knee. With a yelp, Yung tumbled backward. "Well, that was easy," said May. "That's not fair," protested Yung, rubbing his backside. "You know I'm nearsighted." Like most of the other villagers, May and Yung's family were too poor to afford eyeglasses. Yung had grown accustomed to navigating with blurry vision, and most of the time it wasn't a big deal. But certain endeavors, like dueling, avoiding mud puddles, or counting approaching horses, proved tricky. May rolled her eyes. We were standing inches apart, not miles. She also noted it was odd that Yung claimed to be blind as a bat, yet was sharper than an owl whenever the bedsheets at home weren't perfectly symmetrical, or when May's dish had 2 more bean sprouts than Yung's. "That's different," replied Yung, who prided himself on his precision and neatness. "It's much easier to see what stands out when it shouldn't. Anyway, let's start over. This time we'll give me a 3-second head start." "Why?" "The extra 3 seconds make up for my lack of good eyesight and subsequent reaction time. It's only fair." "No, wait. Actually, 4 seconds is better." "4? You have me beaten in 4. After several more minutes of arguing, the twins decided to call a temporary truce until they figured out a new way of determining a winner. Yung lay down in the shade, thinking, while May began climbing the willow tree. May was a good climber, the best in their village. She had a lightweight build and was quick on her feet. She could tell which branches were the sturdiest and identify invisible grooves for footholds. By the time Yung looked up, his sister was already high above the ground. From the tree's canopy, May could see past the village. The Pearl River snaked around a bend and continued into the surrounding hills and mountains. The nearest place, the City of Ashes, was a day's journey away by foot. Nobody in their right mind would go there. It was rumored to be a dreadful area, full of burnt buildings and empty houses. Haunted, too. Strange happenings have been reported by those who passed through the city's outskirts. Accounts of footprints appearing where no one had walked, and the sound of crowds sobbing where there wasn't a single soul in sight. Travelers told of a gray fog that weighed down the city, casting the place in an eternal cloud of woe. So that was an excerpt from the Dreamweavers, and the book is available now, so I hope you'll read the rest of it and enjoy the story. Thanks for having me.